recording. I have a
Yeah.
feeling we're going to pontificate a little bit. So, week 17, uh, the Christmas games, they didn't help my cause with
No,
golf and
no,
whatnot.
no. There were some real dud performances where if you look at the DAPs and you look at the circumstances, you would not have been able to guess that. Like that was not a forecastable disaster
Yeah,
when it came to the Detroit Lions. I mean, they're playing indoors.
yeah.
It's yes, it's a road game. And what I wonder is they were just eliminated, so
Hmm.
was it just the was it sort of that hangover effect of just you're just not in the game anymore. You haven't been eliminated for 2 years,
Right.
and now you're not there. And it's similar to I think what the Chiefs dealt with all year
Right.
because you ended up, you know, going for a three-peat.
Right.
It's hard enough to repeat in
Yeah.
this league, but going for a three-peat, I think it just eventually, I think it just wears you out. That pressure of playing a meaningful game for so many weeks in a row has got to be a grind on players. So I'm not sure a lot of the stuff that we saw in week 17 is forecastable from a data standpoint. We'd almost need like a a team psychologist to try to figure this out, or a sports psychologist. But thankfully, for myself, my golf teams were not in the finals anyway. And it wasn't golf's fault because he had a good semifinal.
Yeah.
It was just the luck of the draw of which teams were active and which weren't. And, there was only one final where I made a lineup decision that I knew I was going to regret. Um, I had picked up Tongus, and my game plan was if DJ Moore was scratched, I was going to play Tongus in that final flex.
Right.
And then when DJ Moore was active, I didn't make the move. And I probably
Right.
should have. If I had, I would have won one more championship.
Right.
But remember what I was saying earlier in last week, you know, stay with the system, stay with the process. And my process said if DJ Moore is active, he's probably a good bet to get me 8 points. And that's
Yeah.
what I needed.
Yeah.
Didn't get it. So, but we saw a lot of that this year with guys like Josh Jacobs was another one where he wasn't even on the injury list all week.
I don't
And
know
then he
what
gets
that was. Yeah.
but he's clearly not 100%. So they were clearly resting him, but because of other injuries in their running back room, they were like, no, we got to activate this guy just in case we really need him.
Hmm.
If the other guys, if Brooks or Manuel Wilson go out, we're needing that third running back. And I think that's what it was. I think it was Jacobs. They didn't want to push him because they'll need him for the playoffs.
Yeah.
But my goodness, how can you how can you factor that in as a fantasy football player? If a guy's not on the injury list all week, it's hard to sit a guy, even if he's
Right.
not going to be. He's clearly not been the same player since his injury. But if he's active, he's getting the volume.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like he's been a zero. It's just he hasn't been a big game guy. But there were a lot of those issues that went on. And yes, you'd have to be insane. It would almost be like starting the season starting the fantasy football season in the preseason.
Right.
If you were going to have a final on week 18, it's just crazy.
Yeah. So, what, how was your final accounting? I'm not going to, just between you and I and whoever, the few that listen, how'd you do this year? If you want to break it down by dynasty, best ball,
Yeah.
FFPC,
So
what was
FF,
your, I mean, just
yep,
basically, in one way, you could just say, I made money, I don't. I don't know if you got an ROI. I don't know how
the
you want
ROI
to
is
do
very,
this.
very, very, very slim ROI.
Yeah,
I I didn't lose money,
yeah,
but the winnings were not as good.
yeah.
I had seven teams, seven dynasty teams that finished in seventh place. And then, as typically is my case in dynasty, my teams got hot at the end of the season
Right,
because they're constructed to be hot at the end of
right,
the season.
right,
And so if three or four of those get in to the playoffs,
right,
I would have probably won two or three more championships.
right.
But I'll end up winning. This is how ridiculous it is. I'll end up winning about $100 in
Yeah,
Dynasty,
right,
which is better than losing money.
yeah.
In best ball, I probably had my best profit,
Nice.
which is strange. Yeah, I had two winners in FFPC.
Oh, well, that puts you. These are
Yeah, so
$35 or these $5 slims?
these were just $5 slims, but I
Yeah,
only played four of them, and I had
yeah.
two winners, so I'll have $80 plus.
Nice.
So that's twice the money.
Oh
I
yeah.
doubled
It's
my
if you did
money.
four, that's $20 and you
Yes,
got 80
I'll get
profit.
$80. Yeah, I'll get $100 back. So that's
Yeah.
$80 profit.
Yeah, that's
So
four times your
it's
money, then that's
four times my
400%
yeah,
ROI. That's great.
yeah. So that was fabulous. One of my best balls, I was in third place
Hmm.
going into the final week.
Right.
That's how close it was, and I had a really good Luther Burden paid off
Right.
at the end of the season and cashed me a
Right.
win. And in another league where another one of the best balls, I also had left Luther Burden. I fell 15 points shy
Yeah.
of winning, so I almost won 3 out of 4. So over there, I did well. FFPC, I made a few bucks. I made about $80 there.
Hmm.
So not a big win again, but at least it wasn't a loss.
Yeah.
And that's the key. You know, you're not always going to have everything go well in the playoffs, but
Right.
as long as I don't lose money,
Yeah.
I'm not going to get too upset with the season.
Yeah.
This year, my preliminary look at things
Hmm.
says I was pretty good at forecasting players. I did not do a good job on roster decisions, like starting lineup decisions.
Hmm.
I second guessed myself a lot this year,
Hmm.
and I didn't have a single time where I made a late change that it was for the good. So,
Right.
so I think my lesson is go with your gut. Like go with the data is guiding my gut, and then I second guessed myself, and I was on a perfect. I second guessed myself about 15 times this year, and I was over 15
Yeah.
in making those last minute lineup changes.
Right.
I think my my goal for next season is just to remember that
Hmm.
and not to sub anybody out unless they're hurt.
Right.
If they're injured, then I make a move. Otherwise,
Yeah.
stay with your lineup. Like
Right.
the DAPS and the process would have guided me to a few more wins, and that might have been the difference. And I,
Yeah.
I had, I made two strategic errors in the semifinals, and both cost me. So
Well,
those are the kinds of things that you look back on and you're like, I hope I learned the lesson
yeah.
this year.
Well, that's why you do a diary.
And
Uh,
another one
yeah.
was crazy. This is how close my final was where I didn't swap in Tongas.
Yeah.
If Nakua makes that one-handed grab,
Uh,
if he survives the ground, that was a $350 difference for the
sad.
season. Yeah.
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 I
So
mean,
that was a championship, another championship that I would have won
yeah.
had that call. And here's the thing. He didn't catch it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
I
he
had
did.
I
I
had
looked
every
at that. Yeah.
I had every reason to be biased on that one.
Yeah. He
That
didn't
was
catch it.
not a catch,
No.
and it's, the thing is like, did I make mistakes on players this year? Of course I did. Like, you're always going to make mistakes on players.
Right.
My biggest mistake was Matthew Golden with Green Bay.
Right.
But at ADP, it was worth the shot.
Right.
And Golden had 3 very good weeks until he got kind of hurt. And he was never the same player again. In fact, didn't see the field as much after that. And then thankfully for the Packers outlook, Watson came back just in the nick of time.
Right.
But I look at that situation and I'm like, I'm not so sure that Golden was as big of a flop as the data says, because he got hurt. And I think sometimes when we proclaim guys busts, we got to look and say, okay, was this guy healthy? Is that the reason? Was health the problem?
Right.
Because, and the good news is, he'll be cheap next year
Right.
for those of us who are daring to take him. And I'm not saying I will at this point, but
Yeah.
I'm not ruling him out. Another guy that got labeled as a bust
Mhm.
was Ibuka, because he didn't do much since about week 6. He had one really good week after week 6.
Mhm.
The reality is he was hurt. He was playing hurt.
Right.
And those kinds of things you look at and you say, if he stays healthy next year, he might surprise people with just how good he is. And then some guys sort of tailed off, like McMillan. But we've seen that happen with a lot of rookies where they hit that proverbial wall. They're not used to that long of a season.
Right.
So, a lot of data to pour through here.
Mhm.
But
And we got time to do it.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have the data for this season. I'll have the data as soon as I do count week 18.
Yeah.
Now, the way that I count or the way I count any week for players, this is another reason why total points don't make any sense. Points per game is better, but it still doesn't make any sense because we're talking small sample sizes. And that's where I think our metrics are all generated on a weekly basis.
Mhm.
We can count week 18
Mhm.
and not have it affect our numbers, because if a guy doesn't play a full game, he doesn't play a full game.
Well, just to let you know, a lot of my investigations are at the team or even the positional levels. So, I don't, if I threw out week 18, that's just, I mean, that list of data for like quarterbacks in general or the other positions. So I kind of take it all in and for the databases. And I know we wanted to talk about that. Dennis, let me just circle real quick for my season. I had a 11% positive ROI,
That's
and
good.
yeah,
It's okay. It's not
I'm
as good as
greedy.
we're used to.
The
Yeah.
year before, it was closer to 50 something percent. I mean, it was money flying out my pants. It was so good. And this year was kind of, there was potential, but it just didn't hit fruition. And all I'll say is, I think a lot of people and I guess this is one thing I thought about. Those of you who play in, and I'm just going to say this in general, the easier situations, ESPN, Yahoo, home leagues, these kind of things, I, I urge you to be extra cautious when you step into the next tank, right? The fish are bigger, right?
Yeah.
And in an FFPC environment, and I'm sure the NFPC and all the other bigger tanks, Dennis, these people, there's not, there's less fools than you think. And
Yes.
again, you could be the sucker at the table. So there's some really serious people there. And so 11% is not bad against some serious and again, we don't weigh that, but I think, people will talk where I won, half my leagues. And I'm like, yeah, where were those leagues at?
Right.
If it's charity leagues or free leagues. I mean, Dennis, let me tell you, those free leagues, you're like, yeah, do I feel like worried about this second? Nah, just go with what I got. It's just,
Yeah.
it invites you to get slack. And I'm telling you, you cannot do that if you want to make money. If you want to have fun, that's different. And I've always said in my process videos, if you want to have fun, I would urge you not to listen to my stuff because it shows you what you should be doing to make money. And so that's the bottom line for me. I don't really care how many, if I put money in my pocket. So 11% is good that way. The draft night out, I won, Dennis. We drafted at the expo. Everybody should try
Yes.
to get into that. I consider that maybe 80% of FFPC. I think there's still some, you know, small fish who think they're big fish, but
Yeah.
still, it was fairly competitive. But in my final, Dennis, the dude had Kittle and Henry, and he didn't put Henry in, and I picked up Tongas before he could,
Ooh, yeah.
and it basically got a zero. I mean, it was so skewed, and it was just clear he had checked out, and I'm like, I don't go to the finals to check out, Dennis.
Yeah.
So, it tainted my victory, but I did win. I have no idea what I won, Dennis, by the way. I don't even remember how much it cost me to enter that damn thing because when you go to the expo, you get your tickets, you can order your Hall of Fame stuff, and then the draft night. I think it's all in one package, and I don't even remember how much it is or what the winnings are. I sent them my name and address, and I don't know what they're sending me. I don't know if it's a rubber duck or a chicken or something, a free hamburger. I have no, you know, clue what I won. But if it's some, I mean, I'm thinking if it was $50, I don't know what it was, but if it, I'm like six, maybe it could have been 200 or 300 buck win. That'd be nice. So my ROI does not count that. If I get some cash from that, then it's gonna, go up some serious amount. But that was that. So like I said, I won money in FFPC. Wasn't like I won last year. And 2015, just to remind you, Dennis, I broke the bank that year.
Yep.
I just walked into a running back, zero running back year, and that's been the worst year for high draft running backs. And I just jumped into that. Luckily, it just all fit that year, and I made thousands of dollars that year. It was crazy. I didn't know if we were even interacting much that 2015. It's been a while. I guess that was 11 years ago. I'm not even sure I knew you 11 years ago, but anyway, I collected a lot that year. Last year I did really good. It was probably $1,500, Dennis. And so anyway, I won four championships. And so they just posted today, Dennis, the where you get your choice of a $350 entry into their big tournament, $200 and four $35 entries into the
Right.
satellite, or 300 cash. So that just came today. I was just looking. So I'll get 800 bucks plus 16 $35 shots there. So that'll be, and then I think if you came in second, and that would have been in four, I think I got four $35
Yep.
shots for coming in second. Do you
Yep.
remember? I think,
Yeah, you get one
yeah,
free
one.
entry for
So
finishing second. Yeah.
16, that'd be 20 shots, Dennis, and I'll have $2,300 in my bank. So I played 35 leagues last year, so I won't have to buy but about 16 to equal that. So I'll still have probably money in my bank to do that. So, like I said, I basically won three shots. That's what I gained this year. Three shots. If you divide your profit by $35, that's what I got, Dennis. I won three more entries than I paid for last year. So, it is what it is. And I will say our best ball tournament, we got 200 bucks. We spent
Very
35
nice.
and we got 200. And overall, in I think our 3 years, we would have now broken even, I think, or maybe 4 years. Anyway, we're broke even. So we've got $200 that I think I'll take the cash. I will spend some of that to renew our dynasty where we have Scataboo, and we looks like we want to continue. That was the question
Oh
I asked
yeah.
Dennis,
Yep.
and he wants to continue. And then that'll give us three more shots at the best ball next year, next August. And then if we, and we were debating, do we want to do another dynasty? I don't know if you pick that up, and I'll keep this one going. Then we'll see whatever you want to do. I don't care. Dynasty is kind of your thing. I've learned a lot watching your tricks, but I'm still it's like, nah, it's too much effort for me to change my mindset from a dynasty to a redraft every week. In other words,
Yeah.
making moves to try to satisfy, I'm barely keeping up with the redraft side, 30 some leagues each week, Dennis. I, you know, Dennis is downplaying his skills because he's got these dynasty and his redraft, and that's a underreported skill. Dennis is able to juggle both those worlds. So I give you, Professor's gold star for being able to juggle those two mindsets, because I'm not sure I could do it. I just don't want to do it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So if any dynasty I do will be in partnership with you, because I'm putting the load on you. I'll be glad to string your defense for you. And I do need to track that this year. I don't know if I got luckier this year. I felt like I was really on point a lot of weeks. I seemed like I had less disappointing weeks, but I was probably tricking myself. But I do need to look and see what that was all about too. So in the off season, I'm definitely going to look at the draft board. I'm definitely going to check my diary, see what I did, all those kind of things. Uh, coming up. So that was my report for the end of the season. Money's in my pocket, not as much as I wanted, Dennis, is the bottom line.
No, it's never as much money as you wanted because until you're winning 100% of your leagues, you're never going to be
I'm never, yeah, I'm
100%
greedy. I want them
happy.
all. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's
I want to
exactly
crush
it.
everybody all the time.
Yeah, this was not a great year, but
Yeah.
it wasn't a losing year.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. Some of the mistakes that I made were again more lineup mistakes than drafting mistakes.
So,
And
Dennis, your process, do you want to? I don't know if you and I really discussed that. I have a certain hierarchy of how I approach it. Uh, I don't know if I can pull up one of my leagues. I'll just show you if I was, and I don't know if I can even start. I don't know if I've got. Okay, here's that. I don't even know if they'll let you shift anymore. I have no clue if they'll let you. Yeah, they're. Uh, well, I don't know. They're trying to make me. I'm gonna say decide later.
yeah.
Yeah. So let me see if I can. Uh, and I'll show you what I do. Okay, so they are letting me set a week 18 lineup here. So I'm just going to pull one here, Dennis. I'm going to share, and then I'll take you through my quick and dirty method. And in early in the week, so this was one that I made the finals. Woohoo! I don't even know if I won. Dr. Payne and not even sure if I won this. The finals. Yep, I won. I beat Brock Stars. Woo woo, crushed him like a bug. So that made me feel good. So I made money here. That's always good. Wasn't even close here, Dennis. So what I do, Dennis, is if I've got a situation like this and I quickly scan the uh, the start percentage is one hierarchy, and I'm looking and I see Woody Marks is at 49% start. So right away, I'm thinking, okay, what's going on there? Okay, they're facing Indianapolis. The opponent rank is 7, so it's perceived to be at least half the folks that have him are setting him in the bench, and he's only expected to get 9 points. So when I see this, it inspires me to look and see what else I have. Godwin is out there, Parkinson is out there, Reed is out there. So my top three in percent start are here: 10, 6, and 8 here. And I see Kobe is 29, so that's intriguing. And Godwin's at 10, which is higher than Woody Marks. So that is my first level of hierarchy. The second is average, and you can see Woody Mark is at 9. So again, it's one of the weakest in my link here. Then I look at last, it was 8, so looks like he was below his average. So those are the thing. And then of course I look at, how easy or hard it is. I really don't pay much attention to the seasonal rank. I know people might, but to me, that's counting so many weeks back. I like to see is he hot in the last game or two. Then for instance, if I was deciding on Marks, Godwin, or Parkinson, I would go look at the DAPS and see if there's anything here helping me or hurting me. And that would be what I would. So for this team, I'm definitely playing everybody else. I don't see anything other than Alave. I've got to kick him out. So I would probably just throw Uh-oh. I guess it doesn't want me to do. Maybe it doesn't like me setting week 18 since I've already played. Yeah. Anyway, that would be my quick and dirty. And then I use DAPS. Then I listen for any injury. Then I get to the details to try to break. But it looks like I had three potential people in that slot: Marks, uh, Parkinson, or Godwin. And so then I would start hunting around there and seeing what's going on, and I'll go from there. Then I go into is it a high scoring game? Then I let the other stuff. That's what I do is my quick and dirty earlier in the week if possible. I used to try to set lineups by Tuesday, Dennis, and
Yep.
I'm tweaking all the way up till Sunday. So that's just real quick. But I think the start, since it is FFPC, they're sharp folks. If I was in Yahoo or ESPN, the easy leagues, I would not ever pay attention. Majority of goobers, what do they say? I don't need to know that. But in FFPC, it catches my attention and it's a starting point for me, Dennis. So I don't know your hierarchy, but that's how I start my process uh, earlier in the week here.
Yeah, and I do a similar thing. I usually go through my lineups the first time on Tuesday, right after I
Mhm.
get done doing my leader of the pack article. So
Which
I've
is a
got,
good thing, by the way. I will recommend that, folks, because he gives you sometimes some pithy comments. Sometimes you bloviate a little bit, but it is, you go through there pretty jaunty. And folks, in about, I'd say 5 minutes, you can get a gist of where Dennis is coming. And it's worth that. Since I edit it, or the real editor edits it, I don't want to reveal that I'm the editor, Dennis. Shh, let me cut that out. Uh, See, when I do that and I see all your grammar mistakes, your verbiage sticks with me, so I remember if you liked it or didn't. So, see, I already gained from that as well. So I'm already thinking, well, what does Dennis think? Okay, I remember what he said. So anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
no. So that's the first sort is guys that are above 80 in MVP, basically. So my top guys are the ones that I will put into my starting lineup. And I just arrange them by who are my best guys and with no regard to what day of the week anybody plays in. And I
Right.
just sort it that way. And usually I'll get to the last flex position and I really won't have anybody that is a must start candidate. Now, with one of my championship teams last week, I got to the end of that process. I got to setting my lineups and I didn't have a single guy that I didn't like, in those flex positions because I had uh, Jamar Gibbs, I had Kyron Williams as my running backs, and I had Etienne and Marks as my running backs, or my flex players, I should say. And I, of course, had Jordan to back up Woody Marks if he was, on the gimpy side. So
Right.
I had four running backs that I really, really liked. And so I felt pretty confident there that I didn't need to make any big moves. And, that's rare though. Usually in FFPC by late in the season, because of injuries and everything else, you've got, or early in the season, if you drafted well, you've got probably eight guys for six positions.
Mhm.
Okay. And when you get to towards the end of the year, sometimes you don't have six guys for those six positions that you're
Right.
comfortable with. You gotta get creative for that last flex. And that's kind of how I do my sort though. And I don't worry about injuries at that point of the week because what a guy is, if he's gonna miss, then he'll come out of the lineup. But I just put based on who I like. And I also look at the percentage of starts as a next sort of uh, sorting factor. But that's where I also will hold out for looking at the DAPs. And a lot of times I'm not so much looking at the DAPs as much as I'm looking at the over under. I want to
Mhm.
have as many guys in the lineup from high scoring games.
Mhm.
And again, if it's a guy on a high scoring game, but he's on the underdog and they're only forecast to get 12 points,
Mhm.
then I'm not excited about that starter. I want guys who Vegas says are going, whose team is going to score 24 or more points.
Mhm.
And if I get that, then I'm gonna go swinging with those guys. I'll go down swinging with guys that are in good situations with good volume.
Right.
And when I do that, when I stay on process, I have a pretty good winning percentage on players who, the guys that I end up putting in the lineup that I say are untouchable, eh, they're not coming out of the lineup. Those are your studs. Those are the guys you're going to war with. But by the end of the season, in a couple of these teams, I mean, I had Lad McConkey and Tet McMillan starting for me, and I won that matchup without them doing much. So it just kind of gives you an idea of how deep the rest of the team was, and that's
Right.
that's a good problem to have. But this was an interesting year for setting lineups. Like I said, my Tuesday lineups would have probably been more competitive than what I went to bat with over the weekend.
Mhm.
That's the sad reality is I second guess things as we got closer to the
What do you,
games.
let's talk about that for a second. Uh, why don't you start making a list and put this to do? What is the reasons that you second get? Doesn't mean if you're right or wrong. Let's not worry about the result. Let's get into your process, Dennis. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So if it's whatever, if it's injury concern, if it's bad weather, if it's lowly started, it's predicted to be a bad, low scoring game. What is it that's driving you? And so maybe you're right in certain reasons, but wrong in others. And when you mix them together, it all washes out, and you get this perception that I'm wrong about setting. Maybe you're right about injury concerns, but you're wrong about your DAP readings, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. In other
Yeah.
words, you may be tricking yourself. You may be missing a skill you don't even know that you really are strong in.
That's a very good question, and it's not something that I followed enough to know why I'm screwing up. Just
That's
that I'm
right.
making a late decision and
Uh-huh.
it's not work. It didn't work out this year, and you're right. Maybe the process is right,
Yes,
and
just bad results.
and the results just weren't there because you can go into a couple or 3 week situation
Hmm.
where you make bad decisions or you follow the process and it just doesn't work. Like over the course of 17 weeks, if you stay on process, you're going to have better results.
Hmm.
if you change the process every week, you're hitting a moving target. And that's in weather forecasting, you always want to have a process. You want to have that, you basically look at the big picture. Okay. You're looking at the big picture from the surface up to about 20,000 feet.
Right.
And you're looking at that, how that changes over time over the next 60 hours.
Right.
And as you look at all that data, then you distill it all down and focus down to that pinpoint spot on the map that you're forecasting for. And then you're only worried about, in aviation, you're only worried about 18 hours. That's it. I always looked at the 5-day pattern because I wanted to give a heads up if there was something major coming. Mm-hmm. And you just got a feel for the pattern that way. So you knew, okay, this is Monday. It's not affecting my Monday forecast, but by Friday, I better be paying attention to what is coming. That type of an approach. And it was systematic every day. Like I never varied from the process. The only reason you'd ever vary from the process is if you got so busy that you had to cut some corners to make deadline. But that was rare. It was very rare. It was more frequent in other jobs before United. But once I got to United, we usually were manned enough. We had enough manpower that you didn't have to make those decisions before you were ready.
Right.
And so that process, it worked. It was a very systematic way of looking at it. And, I would even, like on my off day, the last day off say I was off for 6 days. That last day off, I would sit down and work on the forecast process, just so when I came in on my Monday, I wasn't coming in blind. I wanted to know what the pattern was. And that helped me a lot by staying on process. You always had, you weren't chasing bad results. If you blew a forecast, you blew a forecast. You're forecasting the future. You're going to make mistakes. You're not going to be perfect. But the key is to have the right concepts of why you're starting a particular player. And if that process is sound, if the process has won a lot of money for you, a lot of matchups for you, why would you change it? And I see so many people that just try to chase points from one week to the next. I mean, we saw a lot of it the last week of the season. Taysom Hill had a great week, a great week 16. And all of a sudden, everybody's like, oh, I got to put him in my lineup. No, he has had one good week all year. And if you broke down the reasons, you couldn't find it in the data. But there was no reason to believe that it was going to repeat itself in week 17, that he was going to get all that volume again. It just didn't make any sense to think that way. So I wasn't chasing points. I'd always try to chase volume. And volume can be rather inconsistent, but there's usually a reason, a game script, an injury, something happened to flip that volume, especially for like a running back. Wide receivers and target share, oh boy, that can be all over the place sometimes. But, one mistake that I did seem to make, and again, I didn't track it as well as I should. So that's shame on me for not using the diary method of why did I make this change? And it was usually a last minute change. And it was like going on a gut. Oh, this guy's going to have a big game. Maybe it was just something I heard. on one of the shows. Oh, I really like so and so this week. And it stuck with my brain. And then I switched to that guy, going against my process. I'm not really sure, but it's similar to how the noise used to affect me during draft season. I used to have, start out slow, peak, and then my ability to identify players fell off at the end of the season or the end of the draft season. It made no sense at all because you have more information, you have better information if you use that information correctly. But I think I was letting the noise of other people's thoughts get to me. And I haven't been doing that the last couple of years. And I'm wondering if I have that same problem when it comes to setting lineups. Although I will say this, the one thing I do know is that setting lineups has always been my weakness in fantasy football. Building the roster is always my strong point. And I had that backed up because years ago, I played in a home league against a guy that was really good. Mm-hmm. And so, about year 3 of us playing against each other in this home league, this guy, Jake, came to me and he says, "Hey, I got another league that they want me to play in, but it's a little pricier. I'd like to split it with somebody. You're great at building a roster, but you suck when it comes to setting your lineup." And he said, "I'd set the lineup. You'd manage the roster, and I'll set the lineup." And we did that. We won that league 3 years in a row. And I didn't touch the lineup the entire time for 3 years, but I made all the roster decisions. Mm-hmm. And it was very similar to my better than zero concept. I leaned into
in
potential.
Sleeper,
yep.
They have your start sit percentage. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Where is it? I was trying to remember.
It makes sense because they do a report every week.
Yeah, so you might look.
Yeah,
but I think I was at 93.7%, and my opponent was 92. I think a lot of people are pretty damn good.
Yeah.
But you could look and see, and I thought FFPC may have done that as well. I don't remember it. I may have run across something like that. But if that data is out there, you might look at, I don't know if there's a weekly report. So you might look at that and see what it's all about.
Yeah, and some of the decisions I made, I don't think they were wrong. But swapping out guys late has never worked for me. Yet I still continue to do it. It's the dumbest thing. I feel pretty good about the lineups that I set. And if the other week, I was gonna bench Jacobs. Had Jacobs on my bench in all of my leagues. Mm-hmm. And in about 3/4 of the leagues, I took him off the bench and put him in the starting lineup because he was active. Mm-hmm. And I was like, dude, you had a viable alternative. You were worried about his health. Why did you do this to yourself? You had the right decision. So, that's where it can get somewhat frustrating sometimes when you set your lineups. And again, part of it might be that I just have too many lineups to set. And I'm not staying in process as a result.
Like I said, you might develop a shorthand.
Yes.
And just have you a notebook.
Yes. I think that's a great idea.
Just develop something quick. And even if it is a sound, my iPhone has a recorder.
Yes.
You can just talk into it.
Yep.
And if you don't feel like writing, you could just hit record and go through your lineup and just make notes to yourself. Like, I'm worried about injury here. And then kind of look and see, okay, what was I saying about this league? See if did I miss this entirely, or was I right, but I didn't act on the data? You know, you might clarify that a little bit uh, on that. That might help you.
Yeah, and my absolute last sort on everything is always weather. Like that's the last one. But I discovered something that I need to look again. Just taking a few notes is one thing, backing it up is another. I want to see if we see a drop off in wide receiver points later in the season because we generally have more wind in November and December in
Mm-hmm.
fantasy football.
Mm-hmm.
Do we see the wide receiver data? Do we see
Mm-hmm.
the scoring by wide receivers? Does that drop off a little bit? And again, got to be outdoor games.
Right,
Indoor games, the wind didn't change. But
right,
I'm wondering if that's why some of my running back heavy teams I did better on.
right.
Because again, I had Lad McConkey and Ted McMillan as my two wide receivers, and it wasn't even close in the final. Like I won by 20 points. So
Right.
imagine, that my running back heavy teams seem to do very well this year.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that I was drafting guys super early, it was that the running backs were the value plays
Mm-hmm.
in so many of these drafts. And it paid off. Now, Chris Olave was another guy that paid off for me big time this
Right.
year. But some of those, my championship teams seem to be the running back heavy teams.
Uh-huh.
Travis Etienne was very prominent on a lot of my good teams this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I was right on the decisions at certain points in the draft, and it certainly paid off.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that
Uh,
idea of tracking it better.
I
Why
think,
did why did I make this change? Why did
yeah,
I
I
move?
think I've tracked early, mid, and late season. I was just looking at this and nothing popped out, Dennis, at a positional level, not at a
Interesting.
player level or team level.
Interesting.
Yeah. Uh, so, uh, that is something to think about a little bit. Uh, Sitting there looking. Um, 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 you'll like here. Maybe I should share this. I think this is for this year. I was going to bring this up. This was the data that I think we had using this year. I don't know if you've seen this since August, but I had the Bush LR, the
Yes.
MVP,
Yes.
fantasy points per game, and the com score. And boy, our friend Chase really was extra sad compared. But boy, Bijan and Gibbs, we were on that. Look at Lamb was there was some warning there,
Yep. Yep.
and Jefferson was some warning, but Bowers. So if you look at the four greens, uh, Bowers, Chase, Gibbs. So 3 out of 4 weren't bad. And Puka was, and McBride and Henry. I think that was, and Kittle. And
Kittles.
Lamar let us down, but Josh Allen didn't.
Yep.
Joe Burrow got hurt, but so there may be some information we can get here, Dennis, but you know, uh, just trying to look at this data a little bit. So I don't know if you've seen this or not, but you probably
Yeah.
have, but it's been a while.
Yeah. The guys that had, you know, I didn't have CD Lamb on too many teams this year. And I had Justin Jefferson on one.
Yeah,
That's it. And, I didn't draft a lot of Brock Bowers or McBride this year. I went a little cheaper at tight ends because in FFPC they were going so doggone early.
right.
And, the guys that I cashed in on, though, were like the teams, my two championship teams in FFPC, one had Bijan and the other one had Gibbs.
Right.
So, those were the guys, the running back early teams did exceptionally well because my other running back picks were very good as well. I mean,
Yeah.
when you've got four guys that were automatic these guys are starting every week, unless bye weeks. But when you've got those four spots set with running backs that are getting volume,
Mhm.
makes the rest of your lineup decisions real easy.
Right.
And Olave was just another one of those guys that was a must start at wide receiver every week for me. So
Yeah.
it made it easy. And then a lot of the other guys that were, you know, again, we talked about this concept of playing fantasy football in quarters.
Right.
And there were guys that had hot quarters like Pittman and Igbuka early that paid off. But if you made the transition away from them after they showed a couple of weeks, in the case of Pittman, as soon as Daniel Jones went out, he became non-startable at that point. And in
Right.
Igbuka's case, as soon as he got hurt, I went away from him.
Right.
And I didn't flail with him in the starting lineup very often.
Right.
So, but Olave was a must start all season long. So the one mistake, one guy that I didn't have enough of this year in redraft was Puka. He was a 4 green guy in our
Yeah.
data, and for whatever reason,
Yeah.
I was looking another way. I was looking running back where I could have gotten Puka at, at the right price.
Right.
Now I had some Amon-Ra St. Brown instead of Puka, and that paid off just fine. Puka would have been better,
Right.
but Amon-Ra didn't hurt you this year. You had,
Yeah.
till the very, very end of the season. But there were some interesting picks. Quarterbacks, I think I did very well this year, with the exception of the teams where I wasn't going to take Lamar, and Lamar fell, and I'm like, oh, I'm taking him now, and that didn't work very well. It's you know, I think changing game plans in the middle of a draft is probably not a smart move. Even if a guy falls to you at a good value, I'm not so sure you want to make that running or that quarterback move, because I had my quarterback value guys that I hit on pretty well. And early quarterback teams did not do well. So that was interesting. But Mahomes paid off this year.
Yeah.
He was the cheapest of the elite guys before he got hurt.
Yeah.
And then my other guys were Dak Prescott, Drake May, Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield, and Stafford, the mix and match guys, where you take two and you just figure out who you want to play in any given week. And now I think Drake May has gone graduated to being a must start every week, the way his season went.
I'm
So
curious how our metrics line up again, you know. I mean, I
yes,
won't know all this till, you know, in the summer. You know, it's not the time,
no,
you
no,
know, to worry about
no.
this.
Well, we don't know what the price on these players are going to be either. Where are
Yeah.
their Where is the EDP going to
Best
shift?
ball gives you some idea. We'll probably know by April.
Yes,
We'll start
yes.
getting a taste of what's there.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And when some of the early rankings come out,
Well,
that'll
best
be the
ball is a
first thing.
good idea. You know,
Yes.
the
Yep.
ADP, I like
Yep.
to track those at FFPC because that gives me like a little peek in to what people are thinking.
Yeah, and I'll have my um I just was amused that some people were putting out top 12 and top 20 rankings this week.
Right,
The way too early December rankings,
right,
before December went into January.
right.
And I'm like, well, first of all, that's just crazy. you
Yeah,
know, my first peek at stuff, though, I will have my first look at 2026 by sometime in mid-February, I
right,
anticipate, if not a little bit earlier than that.
right.
I've got my process that will, once week 18 is done,
Hmm.
I'll have the MVP data for everybody. And, I got a quality control. That's the first thing you got to do with your data is you always
Right,
have to go back and make sure you didn't make any mistakes. Then
right.
I'll put the data together. I'll look at it and I'll come up with a way too early guess on where I think guys are going to be. And I say way too early because contract situations are all over the place. You don't know who's going to be playing where.
Yeah,
Um, but I'll have a good idea for a bunch of guys where I think, and it's a range. It's not a static number. So I feel pretty good about that range. And I'm going to grade how I did last year is the one of the first things I'm going to do. But what I've noticed with the data as I'm working with it, I was I was right more often than I was wrong this year. Like there were guys that I missed on,
right.
but none of the guys I missed on were expensive draft picks. So, what have we said? I get past round 7, 8, 9. I just care about upside. If I'm drafting a guy as the 45th wide receiver and he finishes 43rd, that was not a victory in my, people look at that, oh yeah, you nailed that one. No. If I'm drafted a guy at that position, I want him to be top 25. So I'll be happier if he's top 25 or a bust. Like I don't grade mediocrity as being anything. I just it's not how looking at total points, looking at fantasy points per game with guys that only played 6 or 7 or 8 games, that is so misleading on the data. But if you look at and I was calling them spike weeks all year. I'm going to call them quality starts next
Yeah.
year, kind of like they do
Oh,
in baseball with
right,
baseball pitchers.
right.
And if a guy gives me 6 to 10 quality starts, it's up to me to figure out which weeks to have him in the lineup.
Right.
That's where I think, I want a team that'll be good early, good middle, and good at the end. And if you could build your teams that way from the start, then there's less work to do in waivers. Like waivers should be adding 1 or 2 guys that everybody missed on, grab those guys early, and then the guys that are taking over as injuries come on. But your waiver wire for the guys who take over as injuries come on, they better be on your roster before they're really a hot item. Remember Kamani Vidal this year?
Yeah.
That was one of my better picks that probably put money in my pocket.
Yeah.
Um, it's going to be Haskins. No, it's going to be Vidal.
Right.
And that was a good pick. But being on these guys early is the key in waivers. And that I think we did pretty good on, all things considered.
I think so. I think so. We I think we ought to shut down our pontificating here. And here is the games if we want to talk about them. So let me stop recording the pre-show here, Dennis, and then you can go into your usual. Are we doing a matchup lab this week?
Yeah, let's do a matchup lab.
Okay.
We'll do our Husky and Squirrel games.
Okay.
We'll do our handicapping of games
Okay.
this week. So once you shut this down, put that other data up again so we can
Okay.
figure out which are going to be the Huskies.
Okay. Let me shut this down.